Okay, let's get started.
All right. So, hey, what's up, everyone? We have Umair here, and we're going to be diving deeper. This time, we're going to be covering the topics of decentralized finance and NFTs, which are really, really hot right now. Yep, take it away, Umair.
All right, so fun topics for today. Last time we talked about Bitcoin and blockchain, and I think a lot of those things people know about already. It's already been talked about so much, and so much information is available out there on the internet. But what we're going to talk about today are basically the latest two trends in the crypto industry. And essentially, I feel that these two things, decentralized finance and NFTs, which stands for non fungible tokens, are basically two of the main reasons why Bitcoin is at what 59K as at today, right? It's one of the reasons behind the crypto industry getting bigger. It's one of the reasons why the market cap has reached 1.8 trillion, right? And then obviously that is because a large sums of money have gone into DeFi platforms as well as NFT platforms, as well as NFT art, which we're going to talk about, right? So let's just start with like what they are, and what we'll do is we'll do like the first part of the call we'll talk about DeFi's, and then the second part of the call we'll talk about NFTs, right? Like because those are two very different things, and NFTs are a little bit more fun, so that'll be a good second part of the call, right? So the first half an hour, let's talk about decentralized finance. And decentralized finance is actually very simple, right? And it's one of the big reasons why I went so big on blockchain, because it's essentially a form of finance that does not rely on any financial intermediaries, not just banks, but also brokerages, exchanges, and stuff like that. And essentially, what it does is it allows those services that those institutions provide to be done P2P, to be done between one individual and another individual. So, like in very layman terms, right? Like, because we want to keep these calls very simple. What do banks do, right? What is one of the biggest function of a bank? It's like deposits, your bank accounts where you keep your money, deposits, and then banks use those deposits to lend that money out as loans, right? A very simple way of looking at a bank, and that's something that everyone knows. But essentially, in order for this to happen, you need the bank to exist. You need the bank to be that trust party. You need that bank to conduct these transactions, and essentially find the borrowers and find the lenders, right? But in the internet age, the question was like, what if, right? We connected these in the age of the blockchain, I should say, not just internet, is how should we connect these two people, the borrower and the lender, without an intermediary? And one of the biggest things that blockchain provides is trust, right? Decentralized finance, right, is really an umbrella term. There's no one thing which is DeFi, right? There's a lot of concepts within DeFi. For example, one of the ones is yield farming, right? Yield farming, or like what do they call it? What's another name for yield farming that would be more similar? I mean, it's essentially like yielding interest on your savings accounts, right? But or yielding interest from any product that a bank offers, whether that's like a even a mutual fund, right? But yield farming is being used by a lot of companies for different reasons. One of the main reasons is liquidity, right? Like, so for example, Binance, the largest cryptocurrency exchange at the moment, is doing yielding, or allowing people to do yield farm on the pairings, on the trading pairs like BTC, Ethereum pairs that are available on the exchange. What would happen in the past is I'll go there as a user and I want to trade, right? And to have enough liquidity in their books to make sure that at every level of trading, there are enough orders available for these users to be able to buy these orders or sell into these orders. They would use what we call market makers, right? So a market maker is essentially on an exchange. What a market maker does is they provide liquidity. They come in and they set orders at different levels, right? And they could be hedging that on a different exchange, right? Like or doing whatever. Like these are typically funds that have a strategy behind it. And obviously a lot of it these days is automated, right? Like being used in terms of bots and like a lot of algo trading that is involved. But essentially, you would have market makers that would provide liquidity, right? But Binance, when like, why not, we outsource this to our users who have a lot of Bitcoin, right? Like you have 10 Bitcoin lying around, not doing anything with it. Why don't you provide liquidity to the Binance exchange and we will pay you for that? Just like they used to pay market makers, right? Essentially, if you trade on the Binance exchange in the past, or a lot of other exchanges, pretty much all other exchanges follow this model, especially on the futures and derivative side of things, is that the market taker pays a fee and the market makers actually makes a fee for making the market, right? So they essentially get paid for every order they put up. And so essentially, what I was trying to get at is that this yield farming concept within DeFi has basically spread out to even exchanges like Binance, pooling in liquidity from users rather than going to market makers, right? So that in itself is a kind of decentralization. So essentially, what it is what DeFi is allowing all the services that a bank would typically allow you, or a brokerage would allow you, in a decentralized way, where the borrowers or the lenders or person A and person B can get connected without a central party like a bank, right?
Right.
And this concept was essentially made famous by this company called MakerDAO, right? And what they did was that they created this DeFi application that allowed people to borrow DAI. DAI is actually like a stable coin. We spoke about this in our last call. Stable coins, which are pegged to the US dollar, $1 is one DAI. Right. And essentially, MakerDAO allowed users to borrow DAI through smart contracts, essentially on this Ethereum blockchain. Now, most of the DeFi infrastructure today sits either on the Ethereum blockchain or the Binance's own blockchain protocol called BSC, right? So MakerDAO was like the first in the market that allowed to do that. And then by 2020, there were a lot, right? Compound Finance came in, and talking about June, July, this thing took off, man. Like DeFi just took off. And one of the biggest reasons why DeFi took off was not just companies borrowing and lending, allowing decentralized borrowing and lending, which obviously we know what the usages of like borrowing and lending are, right? If you're a lender, you can earn interest on it. This is actually one of the ways you can make money from crypto today, right? Like, let's say you're someone who got into Bitcoin in 2014 and you have 5,000 Bitcoin lying around and you're like, what do I do with this? You can actually actively lend on these platforms and earn interest, right? And obviously borrowing as well. And people borrow for like many different reasons, right? But then it took off, man, because not just borrowing and lending, but a lot of new companies started adopting this yield farming method, right? Where they basically will build liquidity on their coin by offering very, very attractive yields. That means you could come in and stake their platform. So, for example, what would I stake? I would stake like my BNB, my Binance coin, right? And in return for me depositing my Binance coin with them, they will pay me an X% per annum, and APY as we call it, right? And some of these platforms had APY of like 20,000% per annum. Obviously, it's extremely risky, but yield farming pays you up to and so like 20-30,000% is something which is like not unheard of within this market. But even typically 4,000-5,000% APY is not that hard to find. And so basically, hey, sorry.
Yeah, we lost you there.
I got a call.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I got a call. But yeah, basically what I was saying was like in back in 2017, ICOs was a way that companies found of raising money. But in today's day, the way that the companies have found of raising a lot of money is DeFi, essentially by offering very, very attractive yields to customers for staking their tokens, such as their Ethereum or Binance tokens with them, and paying out those yields. And obviously, if their company takes off, it's very, very lucrative for the guy who was farming these coins, right? It's literally called farming, was farming their coins. And then obviously some of them don't make it. Some of them turn out to be scams as well. So this concept of yield farming, which is basically one of the hottest things within, as I said, DeFi is an umbrella term. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in within the DeFi space. And yield farming is one of the bigger things that's happening today. And it's really gambly. And essentially, right, why I want to talk a little bit about yield farming is if you're someone who sort of missed out on the Bitcoin like crazy run, like in the last 3 years, you didn't make a lot of money and you're just like, shit, I missed out. This is one of the ways you can make like a lot of money really, really quickly. But obviously understanding that it comes with a very, very high risk, right? So like when I talk about 1,000% per annum, you could make that, right? You could turn a break even in whatever 6-7 days, and and then the company could turn out to be a bust, right? And then this has happened recently. But it's essentially one way of sort of making high risk, high returns, right? There's a lot of risks involved, being errors within the blockchain. Like this new platform came up recently. It's called Yam Finance. Went down after raising $75 million US in deposit. They went down because of a code error on their platform, right? So again, comes with a lot of risk but high returns, right? And this concept was made popular by this company called Uniswap, right? So they still exist, they're still around. Of course, now they have a lot of competitors. But they essentially invented this concept that rather than relying on centralized market makers to fill orders, Uniswap's algos incentivize users to form liquidity pools, as I said, right? Or staking Ethereum tokens. And essentially for providing the liquidity, you farm the native token,
okay,
right? And aside from the fact that you're yielding these tokens, sometimes they end up coming into use. They end up like, they might get listed on a good exchange, or there might be a company that is doing really well with solid fundamentals, and the price of the underlying token can also go up that you're farming, right? I hope this is making sense, right? We're getting into like real depths of it.
yeah,
But essentially Uniswap, and then like Uniswap, there's a lot of platforms out there now. The hottest one is called Pancake Swaps, right? Which is basically the Binance smart chain version of Uniswap. And there are a lot of yield farming projects available over there where you can actually do this for yourself and attempt to make a bit of money doing it in the process, like really risky, but yeah, quick returns.
right. And so, like, I can understand from a seasoned person jumping into this, right? Into DeFi and making these calculated risky moves. But for someone who doesn't quite know, even if they were to get started, like what do they need to look out for before, or what do they need to take into consideration before getting into it?
Okay, so again, right, as I said, there's many sides of DeFi, right?
Yeah.
It's really an umbrella term, and there's a lot of things that can actually be done within the space, and how you could, and essentially for me, I like to look at it as an even larger umbrella term than some of the people that are in the industry. But there's many ways of getting involved, right? And the pancake swapping and all this Uniswaps and these liquidity pools, all these terms that I'm using could be very intimidating to someone who's a newbie. And it's not that easy as well to do, right? Like you need to use a MetaMask wallet, or you need to know how to use a ledger. And not everyone knows how to use that. I know my friends, some of my personal friends who have been in the industry for 3 or 4 years are still intimidated to do pancake swaps because they don't want to make a mistake, because again, essentially all of these transactions are completely decentralized. There's no centralized party behind it, and even your own human error is too bad, your fault. You send your coins to the wrong address or whatever, it's gone forever. Like in crypto world, there's no such way of getting it back.
Yeah.
Right. But as a passive investor, one of the ways to look at this industry is that I think that this industry is a success, right? It's providing, not only is it generating a large number of assets under management on a daily basis, and it's only growing, it is also providing real use to people. Like people are It's especially on the banking side of things, on the borrowing and lending side of things. There's real usage for this kind of stuff. All right. So what one way of getting involved is to bet on the industry overall, and so then you basically essentially bet on the players or ride on the players who are involved in making these offerings possible. So essentially the companies behind these DeFi projects. And so, for example, Uniswap and Pancake, both of them are two of the largest, and there are many others, but are two of the largest exchanges for DeFi tokens, right? So obviously betting on those two companies is smart, right? I also like to look at what's enabling the DeFi to be possible, the whole industry to be possible, is essentially the Binance coin and the Binance Smart Chain, I should say, and Ethereum, the Ethereum blockchain, right? Amongst other blockchains as well. There's a plethora of them, but obviously these two being the top ones. So obviously, I myself are long on those two, right? Especially Binance, you would have seen in the last two or 3 months has grown tremendously, right? Like a Binance coin being worth $300 is unimaginable to me right now, right? Like just like a couple of days back, a friend of mine sent me a screenshot of like trades we used to do 3 years ago, and each order used to be like 2,000 Binance, 3,000 Binance, or like even 8,000 Binance, because Binance, like in 2000, Binance first of all only started in 2017 in November, right? So it's a very new company, but it is probably now the largest company in the crypto space, right? Like Coinbase and a few others. Binance is right up there, and they have gone so far beyond being an exchange, right? As I said, Binance Smart Chain, they have their own blockchain, which is actually at the center of this DeFi revolution at the moment. So, like even during the bear market for the last 2 years, Binance is something that just held its own because they were growing as a company. And today, I think that Binance is definitely, if you're somebody who's getting into cryptocurrencies and building a cryptocurrency portfolio, right? Just like you need to have Bitcoin in there, just like you need to have Ethereum in there, like Binance is definitely something that should be in there, especially as a passive investor. Because Binance is going to make leaps. So, but that's essentially what I'm saying. So there's many ways of getting involved with the DeFi. So how do you make money in the DeFi space, right? Like, let's say, like if that's one of your questions, or what are the ways in which you could make? Yeah. Sorry.
Let me just stop you there. Something I'm very curious about is like, okay, so you were saying that one of the ways that decentralized finance has been making a hit is from people who want to lend money and people who want to borrow money, right? And the first thought that comes to my mind is like, in these normal traditional banking systems, right? Yes, they lend money and they charge interest and whatever, but when it comes to like, let's say the person not paying up, they have set up their own like fail safes or whatever that tie into the government, tie into AKPK, that legal actions taken or whatever. In the crypto space, how do those mechanisms come about?
So that's a good question, right? So obviously one of the things is that crypto loans are largely collateralized, right? And you can essentially get liquidated on your collateral if you default.
Okay.
Right. And there's basically there's a set of smart contracts that govern the laws of the loan and the repayment process and the liquidation process as well. And it really depends on the borrower and lender in many cases what they are looking for, right? Like how much of a high risk loan do I want, and at what interest are you willing to give me that loan, or maybe there's no deal, right? And then of course, like through this platform running for a long period of time, people start getting ratings, almost like a credit score. And obviously, it's like safe to like lend to these people, right? But then obviously the other part of this is that the DeFi platforms are still doing what a bank is doing, right? They're still pooling in the borrowers, the lenders' funds. They're still pooling them in. So it's not like I'm sitting there, I'm directly lending to Justin, because then I know who Justin is and I can go break his legs if he doesn't pay my money.
Yeah.
So essentially what these platforms are doing, they're still doing what a bank does. What does a bank do? They pool in the deposits, right? Like all of us deposits into Maybank, and then Maybank uses our money to give loans. So essentially these platforms are doing the same thing. They're pooling in the lender's money and then lending it out to borrowers who provide enough collateral to be able to take this loan, and then if they're unable to pay this loan,
so
they get liquidated.
There's still a middleman to oversee the situation.
Well, the middleman is essentially a blockchain, right? So there is a middle party, but it is not a person, right? It's a set of rules governed by a blockchain. So a lot more trustworthy in a way. And there are drawbacks to that too, right? Because like, for example, one of the biggest drawbacks that they have about smart contracts, and this is a real problem within the DeFi world, is that, as we know, and this is an advantage and a disadvantage of blockchains can't be tampered with. The data within, like, so for example, if I did a wrong transaction, right, and I sent money to someone else incorrectly, it can't be reversed, right? It's gone. If I sent it to a wrong address and that address doesn't even exist, that money has just disappeared out of thin air now, and nobody can bring it back.
Oh, even if the address doesn't exist?
Well, okay, so there's some basic checks, like, like, for example, if the length is of the address that you enter is wrong, the field will tell you that, it's not enough letters. But, if one word gets amended somehow, or fat fingers, whatever, many things happen, right? It's gone. Yeah, it's essentially gone.
Shit.
And that's the case with Bitcoin too, by the way. That's a blockchain wide issue. But essentially, because of that, one of the biggest drawbacks is, or how bankers would argue against crypto or DeFi, is that you can't change all this. And sometimes in the real world, you need reversals. You need changing of transactions. Mistakes happen and stuff like that. That's not the case on blockchain.
But is it solvable?
It is solvable. I mean, it is attempted. A lot of different companies have tried to solve this problem in a different way. Like, there's Hedra hash graphs. I mean, I think you can read about this. But one of the biggest things that I believe personally, yeah, it is solvable. And when you try to solve these issues, you're gonna have to bring some kind of centralization into it. But I believe that, look, what is crypto for, right? Crypto is basically taking charge of our own money, removing centralization from the financial system, right? We don't want the bank to hold our money and make unfair gains with using our money, or whatever the argument is, right? If you want that, then you're going to have to be responsible for your own money too. Just like how the bank protects your money. If you don't want the bank to do one part of it, then you have to then the bank is not going to do the other part for you as well.
Right.
So that's what I believe about these things, that a lot of people get hacked. And then I talk to them and they talk to me, and I'm like, okay, so not all your crypto is gone, right? No, all my crypto was on that one exchange. Well, then that's a mistake that you made, right? All your crypto was essentially with a centralized entity, and the risk was all at that entity. So I always tell people who have a large sum of money, or any large sum of money means different to different people, right? If that sum of money means something to you that you have in crypto, always have multiple ways to secure it. Like, a way would be to get a ledger device. I think I showed it during the last call. Buy one for yourself. There's also a lot of other ways of having offline wallets in which you can secure your money. And so you should do that rather than sitting with a central entity. So just like that, yes, all those issues are solvable, but I think that this is something that is going to exist. If you're going to need decentralization of our money, we're going to have to get used to the fact that the security of that money is also then up to us. And so how we send it, when I do blockchain transactions, or for example, if I'm about to do a really big blockchain transaction, and obviously this is not the right way, but I still do it. Like, for example, I send $50 worth of Bitcoin to that person first, and I go did you get it? And he goes yeah, and then I generate the big transaction. I still do this.
Okay.
And a lot of like OGs will like advise against this. They're like, no, you got to trust the system and stuff like that. I was like, I trust the system, but I don't trust myself. I have fat fingers. I could have like typed it incorrectly.
Misclicks are real,
So,
dude. Misclicks are real.
yeah, misclicks are real, man. Like, come on, we used to play poker. We know what's up, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, yeah, that's why I do it. Like and I advise everyone should do it too. Like if they think that they're really careless with this kind of stuff, really check before you do transactions and stuff like that. Because nobody else is in charge of your money anymore and the security of it.
Right. Awesome. So does that pretty much sum up DeFi, or do we still have more?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I just had to sum up, let's sum it up, right? What do we learn about DeFis, right? So DeFis is essentially an umbrella term for a lot of things that happen within the banking world, now being offered on the blockchain in a more decentralized manner, where
So basically services, banking services, we would, yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, even brokerages, anything in finance,
Yeah.
really, right? Like being basically offered in a decentralized way,
Yeah.
right? Even exchanges, right? Like what Uniswap, we talked about Uniswap and Pancake. They're essentially what we call in crypto industry DEX, a
Right.
decentralized exchange, right? Where the borrowers and lenders are basically connected to each other rather than, a central entity. So, that, and then of course borrowing and lending is a part of it. Now that borrowing and lending happens in two different ways.
Yeah.
One is where borrowers are directly connected to lenders, and then also how MakerDAO, one of the platforms that invented DeFi, did it, was basically lending their own cryptocurrency called DAI. And just like MakerDAO, there are a lot of others in the market. Compound is one of them, Nexo is another one of them, and many others, right? So like those just to name like top three. And if you want to get involved in on the action, how you can do it, if you are somebody who's really active or wants to be active, one of the ways to do it is actually do yield farming on a lot of these platforms like Uniswap and Pancake. Very, very high yields are available at the moment, but obviously big disclaimer, it comes with a risk, and that risk being the fact that you could actually lose 100% of what you put in, right? So you have to be very careful when participating in this, but obviously with that kind of risk comes really high returns. And if you're somebody who is more of a passive investor and doesn't want to get involved on this crazy shit, then perhaps one of the biggest ways to get involved is to actually bet on the companies who are providing these services and these platforms. So Uniswap themselves have their token, MakerDAO has a token, Pancake has their own token, and other DeFi platforms. So I like to include, for example, even Nexo and Compound into the DeFi framework, even though the way they do borrowing and lending is a bit more centralized. They're not really connecting users to each other, but they are a crypto company that does loans. So let's include them in this umbrella as well, right? And so, yeah, I mean, essentially buying up a lot of those companies as a portfolio, right, is another way that you can get involved into the action. But yeah, that essentially sums up DeFi. And, it's such a large topic that there's no way of doing it in half an hour. So if there's any follow-up questions from anyone who's watching this, I'm happy to answer any emails. Maybe you can put my email at the end, or, any other way you see fit. We can do an AMA even.
Yeah, sure. Of course, that'd be great,
Mm-hmm.
Leave us comments, guys, whoever wants to ask any questions, or email Umair straight, and perhaps we can do like a live session where, if there's enough people wanting to ask questions, we can get that going as well.
Yeah, that would be the best way, because I know like a lot of the terms I would have said today would be gibberish to a lot of people. So sorry, I had to adjust my camera there. But yeah, sorry, I was saying like a lot of terms I said today would have been gibberish to a lot of people. So, I'm happy to answer any email queries and stuff like that about that. But please don't ask me what coins to invest in, because again, none of these are investment advisors. I mean, I can tell you what I'm invested into, but I'm not advocating any investments, and none of this is investment advice.
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll stay away from that one. No, no.
Yeah.
It's more like grasping the concepts and mechanisms of how these work. If there's anything you want to know about, like how to go about it, anything that you're not clear about, ask that. No gambling tips.
Yeah. I get so many these days, man. Hey, I have 10,000 ringgit. What should I put it into? I'm like, for what? Like, oh, I want to make it into 50,000. Like, I don't know. What do you think about slots? If your aim is to turn 10,000 into 50,000, the real question is how much risk are you willing to take? Because, if you're willing to take a lot of risk, then just go fucking play roulette. Instant answer,
Yeah.
Just
Right,
go
right.
put like 5K on black, and there you go. Boom.
Yep. So our next topic will be something that I find more interesting, especially since Shalin has been looking into art, right? We've been looking in. We've even opened an OpenSea account. We've started uploading some art pieces there.
Nice.
Already
What's the interest level?
very high. Yeah, we've already opened our MetaMask. Familiarizing with how
Nice.
that.
Oh man, I'm so happy. That is
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Was this after I introduced you to it, or was this something you were already looking at from
It
before?
was definitely after you introduced it.
Nice, man. I'm so glad that this is something that could help with. I'm telling artists that if you don't know what DeFi is, like, then you don't know what the fuck you're doing in 2021.
Yeah,
Sorry, NFTs. I didn't mean to say DeFi, I meant NFTs, but yeah.
and it's quite insane, like the level of stuff that's being sold. But I think right now it's just really exploding in that sense, Yeah, and I managed to see Beeple, and I looked at his artwork, and he has some really nice art pieces, man.
Yeah, man. And I mean, I'm sure you would have seen the one that sold for 69 million, sorry.
Yes.
Right? Record NFT sale. It's even like bigger than some of the Monet Van Gogh pieces that I've ever sold. So,
Exactly.
big stuff happening. And this is something that really excites me. So it'd be really fun talking about this. But before that, you're going to have to excuse me just for 1 second. Sorry. I just need to get connected because the device I'm using at the moment is running out of battery.
Right, no worries.
Right. So NFTs, right?
Yep.
Where there's art collectors as well. So while you're on one side of the NFT circuit, in terms of like being a seller, I'm someone who's actually more interested in collecting this art. But obviously, I can't afford like people and stuff like that. But I've been looking at this one thing called NBA Top Shots, which is a whole different application of NFTs, which we're going to talk about right? But let's start with what NFTs essentially are, right? The term non-fungible tokens, what does it mean, right? And what it means more or less that it's very, very unique and can't be replaced with something else, right? So for example, a Bitcoin is fungible. If I give you one Bitcoin and take one Bitcoin from you, we exchange one Bitcoin, it's the same thing, right? It's fungible. But for example, if you gave me the Charizard 120 HP Pokemon card and I traded it for some really super rare baseball card with you, those two are actually non-fungible in nature because they are not the same as each other. And that's where the term non-fungible token essentially comes from. Right. And it's not something that new, actually, right? Non-fungible tokens were enabled by Ethereum. And even today, the large part of the NFT infrastructure still exists on the Ethereum blockchain, but it was invented by Ethereum back in 2017 with this website called CryptoKitties, where you could buy and sell like cats, essentially. Digital cats, not real cats, digital cats. And they were selling for tens and thousands of dollars back in 2017 even. So this is not the first NFT craze. This is essentially the second NFT craze. The first NFT craze was actually credited to CryptoKitties. But this time around, it has a different feel around it. I think obviously one of the biggest reasons is that there's a lot more adoption of the blockchain industry that has come. But obviously, people have realized that their artists like yourselves have realized that their artwork has digital value, and they're trying to extract it, right? So NFTs can really be anything digital. They could be drawings, they could be music, right? Not just art. And they could even be your brain downloaded into a chip, right? This is like talking about singularity stuff, right? It's a concept that has been like talked about a lot recently. Yeah, I mean, essentially anything that has digital value can be an NFT. So one of the biggest example is Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, recently sold his first ever tweet as an NFT. And I believe it was bought by somebody who's based in Malaysia. I think his name is like something Astavi. I can't remember his name exactly, but he paid like $3 million for that tweet. Then obviously the classic example within this market is, like you said, Beeple. Just now, Beeple is like a really, really popular digital artist. And he sold, and this was not his first ever work that he sold through an NFT, by the way. He has sold NFTs before, but this one went for $69 million. And it was essentially bought by this guy who was anonymous before this, and he doxed himself after that. And he's basically like this Indian Bitcoin billionaire, in fact. Some guy who started with like $5,000 and turned it into $1 billion, runs one of the biggest crypto hedge funds. And he bought it saying that he thinks that $69 million is like aggressively undervaluation of this art. Like he thinks it should be worth $1 billion. I heard him say in an interview, right? So yeah, basically just giving our viewers a gauge of how big this thing really is. But the thing is that this is one side of it, right? This is art. This is something which is unique. Just one of it exists, right? And that's one obviously used case of NFTs. And another use case of NFTs is trading cards, essentially, right? So one of the or memorabilia of any kind, or pretty much anything where more than one can exist, right? Like so for these people's classic artwork, there's just one. But if you end up on NBA Top Shots and you're looking at, for example, the trading card of basketball players, obviously very, very popular ones like Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Kobe Bryant's of the world, only one exists. But then when you start moving like lower grade players or middle grade players, your Stephen Curry's and stuff like that, who's still pretty amazing, but there are multiple copies that exist. And essentially, NBA Top Shots is another big application of NFTs, where what the NBA has done, they've taken clips of basketball players, 9-second clips, and they're selling them to fans as you get to buy the ownership of those 9 seconds. And when you actually go to NBA Top Shop and you start looking at these 9-second clips, it's essentially a playing card, right? So you see Michael Jordan catching the ball, shooting up a jumper. And under that, it says all of Michael Jordan's career stats and how many championships he's won and all of that. So essentially, when you get a trading card, that's what you see on a trading card as well, right? So it's a digital trading card.
Right.
And these things have built, like they're going for hundreds of thousands of dollars right now, right? Like, and how it works, it's very similar to if people play FIFA, right? What's that? Forgot what it's called. The FIFA's online version where you can like buy packs and stuff. The FIFA Live, is it called that? I don't know. Like I don't really play FIFA, but somebody told me that like the concept is very similar, where you actually buy packs, And inside the packs, you could actually unlock a really crazy trading card. I mean, essentially like how you used to buy packs in real life as well. Back in the day, people who were into Pokemon cards and stuff like that, they would buy packs. Just like that, you're buying packs, and in that you can find some really valuable basketball plays and players, right? So that's aside from what you've been hearing about tweets being sold and like all this kind of stuff being sold on NFTs, the NBA Top Shop market is big. Hundreds and thousands of dollars is what some of the players are going for. Players that, sorry, players themselves. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's quite crazy. The whole platform is really hustling and bustling at the moment. So my big involvement in the NFT market, unfortunately, I still can't afford $69 million worth of art, and I don't have $3 million to pay for a tweet. But, I certainly don't mind getting in on, like, I'm a big basketball fan. So, like, a lot of people would have heard of Zion Williamson. He's this like new big talent that has come into the NBA. So, for example, I think that he's going to be a big deal in a couple of years. And so I'm collecting a lot of his highlights, right? On NBA Top Shots, right? And just like that, that's basically, I mean, I think that this is something that's really there already has like a big usage. Like I know that other American sports are going to follow this, right? Like baseball and NFL. And this is going to be big when it comes into NFL. And then this thing is going to start spreading globally.
I have one question though. Right before this call, I was just hanging out with Mike, right, on Zoom. And somehow we were also talking about NFTs and stuff. But now I'm going to ask this question, right? So, like you were saying, there is that record. Okay, let's take the tweet for example, right? We can always come across the tweet on like Google Images and stuff, right? Yeah. So anyone can look at the tweet, right? Now, how is that going to make the value of, like with the trading cards and like some of this stuff, in fact some are being used in like gaming skins and stuff, right? So like in that sense, that's going to be worth quite a bit because it's one in the world, and but when it comes to something like the tweet where everyone has already seen it or can just see it, or like the Beeple picture, like everyone can see it, like how does the value go about, or like how do you assign that kind of value to it?
So I know this is basically the question pretty much that on everyone's mind with NFTs, right? And this is, I mean, I think this is where NFTs get a bit awkward as well, because, right, like let's say I went to, forgetting the name of the place again, but let's say I went and took a picture of the Mona Lisa, the actual Mona Lisa, right? I will have that picture on my phone and I can look at it anytime as well.
Yeah.
And if I just really digitally enhanced it and or did whatever to it and printed it out and hung it up on at my place, right, people walking in, they're going to say, oh, nice replica, right? That's never really going to be the real Mona Lisa. Now the same thing with the Beeple artwork, right? The guy who bought it, everybody knows who he is, right? Like nobody ever else is going to have claim to that picture unless that guy ever resells it. But this is where NFTs do get awkward, because essentially what happens is that digitally, the replica you make is really accurate. So if I take a picture of Mona Lisa, that picture is not really going to be the real deal. But digitally, you can literally copy paste something, right? So it's going to look exactly the same. So yes, it is a valid criticism that is that at the end of the day, it's still a replica, right? Everybody is going to know that this is not real, especially for the big pieces of art. So because this Beeple's artwork is really being compared to Mona Lisa of NFTs, right? So if it really is the Mona Lisa of NFTs, then nobody can own the Mona Lisa. Right. The guy who owns Mona Lisa is that museum, and then the guy who owns this NFT is this guy. Everybody knows who he is. So yeah, I mean,
it was interesting because when I was checking out NFTs, like I said, then we came across this example where a bunch of guys, I think bought an artwork from an auction, set it on fire, took a recording of it being on fire, and then sold that for like a much higher price, being an NFT. Yeah. And that was
Yeah.
like a really creative way, you're destroying one piece of art, and that is a piece of art.
Yeah. Look, man, it's just essentially at the end of the day, it's about the flex. Like, first of all, on the blockchain, there is a digital ledger. Like, that's what a blockchain is, right? Blockchain is a ledger.
Yeah.
So with NFTs, there's a digital ledger of who the real owner is, right? So
Right.
there's always that, right?
That's
So
it's bragging rights.
it's bragging rights. It's the flex of like, yes, I own it, right? Look at the blockchain, like it's mine, right? And a lot of people, for example, who buy NFTs, you can like use them as your display pictures on Twitter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if you see other people using it, you can actually tell Twitter to take it down, right? Even Twitter will do that for you, even, right? But it's just the flex of owning it. Everyone is good. Look, if I come across a really cool artwork,
Yeah.
right? Like let's look at it this way, right? It's Justin Victor's cover picture.
Okay.
Let's say it's Justin Victor's cover picture is an artwork, right? And I
Right.
come across it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty sweet. That's really nice. I wonder who owns it, right? Like, does Justin Victor own it? I could just go validate it on the blockchain, and I go like, oh, lol, he doesn't actually own it. He's just using it. Or go like, oh shit, Justin Victor, Mr. He's got it. Nice one. So there's a very easy way of actually validating it as well. But yeah, at the end of the day, look, it's just about the flex of actually owning it, right?
Right.
So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
It's a valid concern, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like right now, if you were to look up certain art pieces, you're not gonna figure out who's the owner of it. Like not all are documented as in who are the owners, but
Like, if anything, there's basically another use case for NFTs, right? Like essentially what you said, it's a ledger of ownership. And you see, these ledgers are going to exist forever. So if this, in 200 years time, if this Beeple's artwork like becomes like a Monet piece or a Mona Lisa piece, like the big thing, from day one, you're going to know, like essentially this guy who bought it, the Indian kid, the Indian billionaire who bought it, he's written into the history, right, as the first owner of that painting, right? Now obviously, like a lot of the big artworks that exist, like the physical ones, they do have record of who's owned it over the years, but some they don't. Some they don't even know how much it gets sold for, right? Like the prices are undisclosed and stuff like that. That also is something that's now available on the blockchain. You're going to know exactly how many Ethereum or whatever chain it was sold for. Essentially, it's that. It's from real art, I still feel. But, the only big difference is that digital photocopies are way better than real photocopies.
I've got a pretty curious question. So when it comes to cryptocurrencies and NFTs and everything in this digital world, if the owner dies, like in a centralized space, right? You know what happens? The ownership goes to the decision is either in the will or handled by the courts and whatever, and there are those processes that happen. But when it comes to like, let's say a person has like loads of Bitcoin and loads of NFTs, and he goes like how does that get transferred, or does it not get transferred?
Look, so this is a very, very good question, right? And a lot of Bitcoin are lost every day because Bitcoin holders are dying almost every day because Bitcoin's big now, right? So a lot of people hold Bitcoin, and every day, people might die who are holding Bitcoin, right? So it's a very real problem. And, to answer your question, if the guy hasn't set in a proper process in place for those to be handed to the next of kin, then those are lost forever. Right now, there is this thing in the crypto. There's this concept called the dead man switch. Right. It already exists. It's a decentralized way, I believe, of handing your crypto wealth down to the next of kin. So after you've passed away, your next of kin can actually, answer some questions and stuff like that and get it. right? But also like how actively like and I encourage people like I do have this one friend whose dad has recently got into crypto, and that guy has gotten into it for a significant amount, and he's an aged gentleman. He's 72 years old, I believe. So I told him that, look, the amount you have put into it, you need to basically put some kind of process in your will for this to be handed over to whoever you want it to be handed over to, right?
Yeah.
And essentially what people will do is they will um you know there's many ways of doing it. So like for example, you can have a dead man switch where there could be answers to some questions that sits in your will, and your next of kin after your death can actually go and answer those questions correctly because he will get it from the lawyer, right?
Right.
Whoever is executing the will
Yeah.
give you those answers, and you can go and claim it. Or
Yeah.
very simply, you could actually put your private keys in your will, and then somebody after your passing can claim it. A lot of people who I know who have a significant amount of wealth in crypto have given some kind of backups to their other family members, like, hey, just in case something happens. So, for example, you could have like, I encourage people to always have two FAs enabled, right? I think we talked about this in the last call, maybe we didn't. So, for example, with your brother or your mom or your wife, whoever you trust the most in your life, you could give them your passwords and email address, but only upon you passing will they get access to your 2FA device.
Right.
Right. So they can actually, they have the username and password, but they don't have the 2FA device, right? Which they only are able to obtain after your passing, and then they can get into those accounts, right, and do whatever they want with it. And with NFTs, I believe, especially like a lot of the big artworks, like what was sold for people, I am pretty sure that they have a dead man switch implemented. Right, they have some kind of a dead man switch where if the guy who's holding it has passed, there's a way of reclaiming it from him and doing whatever with it, auctioning it or whatever, right? So yeah, there are mechanisms at play. However, going back to the same point, right, if you're going to be in charge of your money, everything do with your money, you're going to be in charge. That even goes down to like making sure that it's in your will.
Yeah.
Right? Because in traditional world, like if you die and you have like $1 million in your Maybank account, your family is probably going to end up getting that somehow anyway, right?
Yeah.
Your bank is not going to run away with that money. The next of kin will have the claim to that money anyway. But in crypto world, unfortunately, if the next of kin does not have your private keys or some kind of backward, they're not going to get it, right? So of the 18 million Bitcoin or something like that, whatever, 18 million Bitcoin, 18 point whatever million Bitcoin that have already been mined, 4 million of those Bitcoin are lost already.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that 4 million is either people just losing their device. See, actually 4 million, right? Sounds like a big number, but back in like 2010, 2011, when people didn't really know that Bitcoin was a real thing, some tech guy might land on it through some like portal on the dark web and just go, oh, this Bitcoin might cute. And he mines like 5,000 Bitcoin and then goes like, yeah, maybe this is not for me. And just like throws away those 5,000 Bitcoin. Those were still real Bitcoin back then. And those Bitcoin are just lost. Like I watched this like documentary of this guy who basically had 18 million US dollars worth of Bitcoin on his hard drive. And, just woke up one day in 2017 going like, I have a massive fortune. What do I do about it? He had thrown that hard drive away, right? And it's actually in a landfill in the UK. And he's trying to get a permission from the government to dig up that landfill to find his hard drive, but they wouldn't allow him to, right? So there's like lost Bitcoin like that. And then there's a lot of lost Bitcoin that have happened because people have passed away, right? So yeah, it's no way around it actually in the blockchain world.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. And how do you see NFTs evolving?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? Like at the moment, NFT is basically being used for digital art mainly and digital memorabilia.
Yeah.
On the other side, and for artists, it's great. Artists like yourself gives you a way to sell your work to the market. It gives you essentially also a way to show it to a larger base of users than you would in the real world, right? Especially in like current stage. As a buyer, obviously, yes, go ahead, buy it. It's great. It's a way of like making some speculative returns on it as well. As on the, for example, on art, there's way of making speculative returns, and then there's NBA Top Shots for people like me who's a collector. And I'm, as much as I'm in it for returns, I'm also in it because I love basketball, right?
Yeah.
And that side of it is also going to continue to grow as well into other sports. It's also, by the way, already gone into football, right? So a lot of the big European clubs like Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, and stuff like that, they've launched. Atletico Madrid is one of them. Juventus is one of them. Have launched their fan tokens, and then basically it's on this platform called Chiliz, also a big NFT platform. One of the companies that I'm really bullish on, and it essentially gives a way of fans getting involved with the decisions of their football club, fan involvement, right? And voting and stuff like that, right? So where NFTs are going, I think NFTs is going to many places, right? I think one of the biggest things that I think that NFTs very swiftly going to transition into is music. It's already happening. Artists have released songs as NFTs in the past. Artists like Weekend, who's a really big artist, is actually about to release a song as an NFT. And look, Jay-Z and Beyonce and or Kanye West, they went and started off a whole streaming site, which is called Tidal. I don't know if you've heard about it, because they felt that how their music was being distributed was very unfair. And what they were, I mean, here's like millionaires complaining about how what they're earning is unfair, but essentially, it is, music in a way is an industry where a lot of middlemen exist today, right? From production to marketing to, you know, management and a lot of million different things, right, within music. And so I could see why an artist goes like, look, I'm feeding all these people, but I am the one who created this piece of art and I should like get XYZ for it. And that's essentially why Jay-Z and Kanye created a Tidal, because they felt that in rap, a lot of artists get robbed by the music production companies, right? So it was a way of distributing music through Tidal. So NFTs, obviously, a big clear shot out of the park. It's a way of distributing your music directly to the users. And NFTs in the long run, I think is going to be that. It's going to be a way of directly supporting the artist that you like. Now, this is $1 million idea, right? Whoever wants to go implement it, whoever's listening to it can just go do it. I have no time to do it. But essentially, what I envision not in the not too distant future is an NFT platform for songs, like a Spotify, which is based on NFT.
And if like people just want to buy an album of the artist, he just buys it directly.
You buy because you pay $9.99 anyway, right, to Spotify. Now, instead of paying that, like if that existed for rap music, I would really be into it, because sometimes I hear like rappers who I really like, but they're not popular. And like, you know, I'm just like, this guy's probably struggling in life, you know, and you know, I'm not gonna like spend a buck on him, but like if it was on my Spotify, right, and my part of my Spotify fee was actually going to him because I'm actually listening to him so much, that'd be great. I listen to a lot of artists who are not popular, and I would rather my subscription fee directly go to them if I'm really listening to them, rather than, you know, being equally distributed or whatever way it's distributed. Like my fee is basically revenue for Spotify, and then what Spotify does with that money, I don't really know. Right? But if that same $9.99 actually went directly to whoever I'm listening to, like, you know, all the power to them, right? Like all the power to everyone, right? So it's definitely going to be a big way of exchanging art, and then look of exchanging music, and then look, NFT. We've seen crazy things happen on NFT, right? Like the tweets being sold and stuff like that. NFT can be created for anything digital, right? Like anything which is digital can then basically be turned into an NFT, and it can then be sold off for a value on the Ethereum blockchain or other blockchains that are now doing it as well, right? So, I mean, that's essentially the short answer. You know, where I see it going is more like in the more short term into other forms of art, which is music, which is Like, for example, so we talk about music, right? Same thing, same way about documentary makers, right?
Oh,
A lot of
yeah. Or independent
you know,
filmmakers, man. Like there's,
independent filmmakers. Like,
yeah,
you know, there's this website called Curiosity Stream. I don't
yeah,
know if you've heard about it,
yeah, yeah.
right? So I'm a big fan of Curiosity Stream, right?
Right.
Obviously, but you can see like how there's a market for like NFT documentary makers, right? Because a lot of those documentaries that end up on Curiosity Stream are probably the ones that, you know, so first of all, there's some great ones on there, but then a lot of the ones I can see the production quality is lower and stuff like that. It's very obvious that they're independent, right?
Yeah.
And Curiosity Stream is currently the only way of them making money, right?
Right.
Because like independent filmmakers really struggle, you know.
Yeah.
So, but then, you know, there are people who are in love with their art, right? Sometimes it could be like a billionaire who watched like your super whatever, like completely independent film and fell in love with it, and right now he wants to give you a lot of money to make your next project or whatever. Many different things, right? So more immediately I see it like literally spreading into other forms of art, filmmaking, music, and stuff like that. But in the long run, it's so hard to say, because like, look, DeFi, right? We talked about it earlier today. 2017, when the bull run happened and everyone was talking about like crypto institutionalized use and stuff like that, where's crypto gonna go?
Yeah.
Nobody could have thought about DeFi happening, right? The concept was always there. Yeah, borrowing and lending, banking on the blockchain, P2P, all that, all those keywords were there, but nobody could have imagined the yield farming side of it, for example.
Yeah.
Yield farming is so cunning, like the pooling in of funds and, you know, using them for whatever it needs to be used for. I think that's essentially going to happen to NFTs as well, right? So we probably don't even know what things are going to get into NFT, but it's very obvious. Like gaming skins are big, you know, unique ownership of things in games, right? Things like that are definitely like very NFTable, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And if you get to showcase it, right? Like Mike was saying, you know, like if this guy is in game and he's like a pro gamer and he's got like the only one, he's the only person with that one skin, you know, and he gets to showcase it in game, like that's bragging rights times 10x, you know.
Yeah. You know what needs to happen is like, if, for example, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and all these big sites actually let you use NFTs as your profile pictures, or like it can
that'd be
even be
cool.
uploaded as, and so like, you know, only you as the authentic owner can actually upload it.
Yes.
So no, I mean anyone can, but it should have some kind of blue tick, like, you know how like Instagram blue ticks the authentic ones.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, like the guy who bought Beeple, if he on his Instagram account goes and uploads that blue tick thing, his Instagram account is going to become very popular, because his Instagram account is going to be basically the showcase of that piece of art.
Yes.
He's the owner.
Yeah.
And he's going to get to showcase it through Insta, right? So, but having said that, look, these big tech companies, I feel personally, they're very jealous of the crypto space, right? They're not very supportive, right? Or even if they have been tried, like Facebook, when they did they went off and tried to create their own crypto, right?
Right.
And then you have Teslas of the world who are actually very supportive of Bitcoin and the crypto market. So that's probably something that's not going to happen. But yeah, hey man, like look, with NFTs, no holds barred at the moment, can go anywhere.
I'm actually pretty excited about this evolution, you know. I can't wait to see what other stuff now. I mean, NFTs, yeah, artwork, you know, digital artwork or digital stuff, you know, and music. But like, I can't wait to see like all the other aspects, you know, that we have, all the other stuff that we can appreciate, how that's going to turn into this new ways of going about stuff, you know.
So you have been using OpenSea?
Yeah, been checking it out.
So what's your experience with that?
Well, basically we just created a shop and we just was going through like some of the other artwork, but so many, dude. And some were funny, you know, some looked like there wasn't much thought put into it, but it was selling for like some Ethereum or whatever, you know. And it was interesting to see, you know, it was really interesting to see. The thing is, I like it and I'm excited to be involved in it. That's pretty much what it was like for my wife. It was mind blowing, because
Have you guys managed to sell anything?
no, not at this point yet. But it,
Are you guys creating digital art, or are you guys creating real art that you're trying to sell on that?
she has a collection of real art. She has also played around with digital art, right? And what we're trying to do is have real art and digital art. Like some of these people
Right.
have sold that. They have sold their real art and an image of that real art, probably with some animation or with some digital modifications to it, make it look a little different or whatever. So a person who buys the NFT also gets the real piece of art, so that you have that one tangible thing to go with it. Like it's not just the NFT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, this is a topic that's been talked about in the NFT market as well, right? Like basically connecting NFTs to real world things, and that could be real world art. And
Yeah.
I actually think it's a good idea, because what essentially it provides, what an NFT provides, it provides a certificate of ownership,
Right.
right? Like going back to like the Mona Lisas and the Monets and the Van Goghs and stuff like that. When you actually buy them, it comes with like a certificate that says
Right.
that this is the real one.
Yeah.
Now, an NFT is a online version of that same certificate of
Right.
it's
Exactly.
your
Exactly.
authenticity of ownership, or authenticity certificate essentially, right? So
Right.
I think there's definitely use for NFTs being connected to real world art and real world things as well.
Yeah.
But that's basically a topic of conversation in the industry, whether NFTs for real life art is going to survive or not. So digital art is where it's at, man. It's 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in the NFT space that you probably want to touch on?
Anything else in the NFT space? No, not really. There isn't really much else. I think that whatever we have talked about today, you can basically go Google
Yep.
NFTs. I think we have given you the basic. I guess one of the things we can talk about is like how you can get involved from the crypto side of things. I think what I want to talk about like next week is on how to build a portfolio if you're a passive investor,
Okay.
right? So obviously buying and selling NFTs is one side of it, but what we didn't really touch on today is companies that are enabling this NFT infrastructure, right? And obviously there's a way of getting involved with those companies too. Like I talked about the football fan tokens. They're built on this platform called Chiliz, CHZ.
Okay.
It's a token that is basically 60 times up from when it was launched,
Okay.
right?
Wow. Okay.
And so, like for example, I now have an NFT portfolio. Theta, CHZ. These are some of the companies that have recently, um, been really hot in the NFT space. So one of the ways I find in which I can actually get involved and make money from the NFT stage is actually betting on the companies that are enabling this revolution, right? So yeah, have a look. The coinmarketcap.com and coingecko.com. We talked about these two sites last week. They should be a Bible, right? So there's like an NFT section on both these sites, which tells you the top 10 market cap companies. And that's basically, if you don't want to buy and sell art, that's another way of getting involved in this space, betting on the ecosystem. So yeah, I mean, that's it. That's where I want to leave it for this week. Perhaps next week we can actually talk about how to build a crypto portfolio in 2021.
Right. Okay. So once again, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask Umair about anything, DeFi, NFTs, crypto, leave us comments, email Umair if you want to communicate with him directly. If not, we can have a Facebook live session or an Instagram live session where people can just come on and ask Umair anything and let us know if that's what you want. Let us know if you find all this information valuable. Yeah, interact with us.
All right, man. Thank you very
All right,
much.
Umair.
Have a good
Thanks.
day.
You too. Take care, man.
Bye bye.